Hey, it's Erin. I am currently 2 weeks out from the Sacramento Pro and 6 weeks out from the Bikini Olympia. We're definitely in crunch time for the Sacramento Pro. I've already started packing, and this is typical for competitions. I will get my stuff together a couple of weeks before, knowing that that peak week, I sort of turn into a zombie. So typically, the better we look, the worse we start to feel. So productivity is definitely decreasing, having issues with sleep because I'm hungry, and recovery is slow. This is just part of it during this process. I have about another week of tough workouts, and then the Saturday before the show, I typically will have my last hard glute workout, and then I'll go into peak week. And absolutely, I'm going to discuss peak week during the next video, everything I do, and then I'm gonna take y'all with me to California and get some behind the scenes footage of the show, which will be fun. As far as changes from last week to this week, weights, I'm lifting 4 times this week. Recovery is a bit better than it was last week, and that's simply because I took more time away from the gym and just increased my overall steps. So this week, I'm gonna go to my trusty notes. My calories have been decreased from 1980 to 1860, nothing too crazy. 150 grams of protein, 40 grams of fat, that remains the same. I've cut 30 grams of carbs from my diet, so I went from 250 to 220 this week. Definitely starting to feel it. So I'm doing high intensity, low impact HIIT. So that is stairs, that's elliptical, spin bike, no more running. So much eccentric force occurs with running. It makes it really, really tough to do the HIIT and to train legs and glutes 4 days per week. Steps, still getting 10,000 to 12,000 steps per day. On days where I'm not lifting, I may try to get 15,000 steps. And this is not in the form of cardio per se. So I go out and I'll walk probably somewhere around 3 to 3.5 miles an hour. So something nice and easy just to get that calorie burn and just to keep my NEAT up. So that is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And this is the amount of calories we can burn every single day just through activity. And typically when calories are decreased, NEAT is also decreased. And this is something that the body just does, as it is very, very great at adapting to changes. So if you're in a caloric deficit, make sure you keep your activity levels high. This is going to go a really long way towards helping get you lean and making sure that you stay in a caloric deficit. So you don't want to decrease your calories and then just automatically decrease your activity levels. You're going to go back to maintenance. Let's see, I am tracking everything through the Oura Ring. If you're not familiar with it, it is great wearable technology. I wear it at night. It helps to track my sleep, my heart rate variability, heart rates as far as my beats per minute, and just general readiness. Of course, this is not sponsored. It's just something that I love. I love data, the ability to see how I'm doing, especially with HRV. Now that heart rate variability, really important. We want to try to keep it high. And surprisingly, when I'm in a caloric deficit, my HRV actually increases. But I do typically keep a close eye on it. If my HRV starts to dip, let's say body temperature goes up, respiration goes up, that's a sign that I'm not recovering as well. And then I will typically pull back on the reins just a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, so last tough week of training. Today's workout is going to be, actually fell on Halloween weekend. So I figured, why not take it back to old school, wear a leotard and act a fool in the gym. So we're gonna do some upper body and some glute trigger sessions. So if you're not familiar with a trigger session, it's something that I got from Mind Pump. Awesome way of getting just a little bit more volume in. It's not a workout per se, but it's great for working on that mind muscle connection, glute activation. So we're gonna go ahead and do that upper body workout mostly shoulder based, and our glute trigger session. And I'll talk y'all through exactly what's going through this little brain of mine. So without further ado, let's get in the gym, 80s style, and train. Let's get into this workout. And the first exercise is dumbbell shoulder press. Now this is a half bench and it is set to a high incline. So you'll notice that the back of the seat is not quite at 90 degrees. This is awesome. If you have a regular adjustable bench, you can go ahead and set yours up to that high incline. This is going to put you in a proper pressing position, much better for shoulder health. So here, 4 sets of 8, feet are flat on the floor, core stays nice and tight, chest tall, bringing the upper arm to just below parallel, really focusing on that negative and focusing on pressing the dumbbells up and a bit together at the top. Wrists stay straight. Thumbs, of course, are wrapped around the dumbbell for safety. Exhaling on the press up, inhaling on the way down. Moving on to cable crossover lateral delts or side delts. I love the cables for this, for that constant tension. So you're going to get tension both on the way up and on the way down. I like to go just above parallel as you go to that mid-rep point. Palms facing the floor. And with this, I've got the cables starting at just about shin height. You can really adjust this machine to however you'd like to use it. You can also use that double cable machine. And here, focusing again on that negative, slight bend in the elbow, and that slight bend stays throughout the exercise, focusing on pushing the cable versus pulling. This can help keep those traps out of the equation. Next, we're moving on to a pull down modified for rear delts. So here, I'm really focusing on pulling high, keeping those elbows up. The weight is nice and light to keep the emphasis on those rear delts. Really important. You want to stay nice and light if your focus is on the rear delts. And getting that full extension at the top. And again, I'm thinking about almost elbowing something behind me versus pulling down. And this can really help keep those traps out of the equation. And for this exercise, I'm doing 3 sets of 15. On the cable crossover, I did 3 sets of 12. Wrists stay nice and straight. And keep the body relatively still and really focus on keeping that tension on those rear delts. Typically, the higher you pull, the higher up on the muscle you're going to hit. All right, moving on to another rear delt exercise. We're back to the cable crossover for rear delts. So this is a reverse fly, overhand grip. The cables are crossed, palms facing the floor. And keep those elbows up, keep the body still. Really get that good squeeze at that mid-rep point. And this exercise is really excellent for hitting not only the rear delts, but you're going to hit the upper back too. Give you some nice width across the upper body. And here the weight is pretty light. I'm going to do 3 sets of 15. I typically go high rep for those rear delts. They're not a muscle group that responds well typically to heavier weight just because everything else can take over. So your lats, your rhomboids, traps can take over if you go heavy. And great with a constant tension. All right, on to trigger sessions for glutes. This is a body weight banded hip thrust. And for the trigger sessions, they're typically between 5 and 10 minutes. I'm not focused on getting a burn or anything like that. This is just getting a good contraction. So what I'm mostly focused on is going nice and slow, getting a good squeeze, and just activating those glutes. So I don't even keep track of the reps. I'm going to do 2 sets here. And if I had to guess, probably somewhere between 10 to 20 reps, depending on how slow I go. But I'm really focused on tucking that chin, pushing that pelvis forward at the top, weight through the heels, and I'm kind of experimenting with what stance feels the best. All right, moving on. We've got a band and we've got a GHD glute ham raise, which I'm using for glutes and hams here. The band is great because as you reach that mid-rep point, you're able to get just even better of a contraction. Now at that top point, that mid-rep point, I'm focused on really tucking my pelvis under, keeping constant tension. And this is just mostly for that contraction to get that mind-muscle connection. And 2 sets here also, going nice and slow. You don't want it to burn. You just want to get that activation, get a nice little pump, and call it a day. All right, moving on to the abductor machine. And this machine, you can use it so many different ways. So here I'm kind of fiddling with foot position. Typically, I like toes down. I like to have a little bit of a straighter leg and try to lean back as much as possible. And once I get that good contraction, I typically will kind of stick in that range of motion. So I like to do pulsing, which you'll see here. Again, not keeping track of the reps. Weight is super light and just working on getting that contraction and activation. So 2 sets here also. And the trigger session is something that you would use on your non-training days or non-leg and glute training days. You can do them for upper body also. Moving on to reverse hypers. Now for this exercise, focus on really pushing the hips into the pad, and I'm almost working against myself as I lower my legs. So I'm keeping that tension on the glutes and hamstrings as I lower and really squeezing at that mid-rep point. Now you want to make sure you reach kind of like a plank position, that you don't want your legs to go too high. You don't want to overextend. This is going to put extra pressure on that lower back. I turn my toes out slightly. I feel that it hits the upper glutes a bit better. And one of the great things about trigger sessions is that you can just fiddle around with different stances, different positions, and just doing different things to get a better activation. And then you can apply. That's it for this week. Next week, of course, will be peak week, and I'll share with you everything show related. So I'll give you a peek at the suit I'm wearing. We'll talk about hair, makeup, tanning, if that's something that y'all want to discuss, along with how to manipulate carbs, sodium, water, etc. to get that perfect stage look. If you made it this far, I love you. Thank you so much for watching. If there's something specific you'd like to see, please let me know in the comments below. If you try those trigger sessions, let me know. I really love seeing you take the workouts and making them your own. That's it for this time. Until next time, train smart and train hard, y'all.